Manny Pacquiao secures a 12-round unanimous decision over Chris Algieri. Pacquiao struggled to find his range early on in the fight, and he was missing quite a bit in reaching in with punches because he's not used to having to deal with a guy as tall and rangy as Chris Algieri, especially a guy who moves that much. Because when a guy's tall, much taller than you, and has much longer arms and he's moving a lot, it offsets your balance. It can be difficult to cover the distance and then at the same time set yourself to land a hard shot because the guy is constantly moving around and you're having to punch up at the same time. So Pacquiao struggled to find his range early on in the fight. He was missing, he was reaching in with shots. But towards the middle of the fight, he started finding his range. He did actually score a flash knockdown. I think it was in the 4th round or so. He scored a flash knockdown. Algieri wasn't hurt. But towards the middle of the fight, Pacquiao started landing real shots and Algieri was hurt. The first real knockdown he scored was from a straight left hand and Algieri went down hard and he was hurt. And from there on in, it was just a matter of survival from Algieri. He's proved he's got heart before. He showed that in the Provodnikov fight. And he was down. I've lost count how many times he was down in the fight. It might have been 4 or 5 times, maybe more. But he was down several times in the fight. A couple of them were little flash knockdowns, half pushes. But there was also a few legitimate knockdowns in there. And Algieri, to his credit, like I say, showed heart, made it difficult for Pacquiao to finish him. Some people are going to say, well, Pacquiao's not the finisher of old. I don't think this performance right here is enough to say Pacquiao's not the finisher that he used to be. Because, like I say, Algieri was moving so much and he's so much taller than Pacquiao. It makes it difficult to actually be able to finish a guy like that. So I think the height and reach and movement dynamic made it awkward for Pacquiao to get the guy out of there. I don't think it was so much that it wasn't the Pacquiao of old. I actually think that Pacquiao looked far more energetic in this fight than he has done in many of his recent fights. So I don't think it was so much that. I thought Pacquiao had a lot of bounce in his legs. He was punching with power. And yes, he was missing a lot. He was making a few mistakes. Algieri did catch him with a couple straight right hands down the pipe, but Algieri can't bust a grape. So Pacquiao was never remotely troubled by any of the shots Algieri landed, as few and far between as they were. And it was pretty much a routine victory for Pacquiao. Wasn't anything too challenging. Yes, awkward because of the height and reach and movement, but Pacquiao got there in the end, scored loads of knockdowns, and he seemed happy at the end of the fight. You can tell a lot by a fighter's performance by looking at their face at the end of the fight. And Pacquiao seemed happy, light and bubbly, and he seemed pleased with his performance as far as I'm concerned by looking at his face. So it is what it is. I don't think this fight really tells us that much, to be honest with you, because Algieri, although he's got heart and although he's awkward with his height and reach and movement, he's got limited skills. He doesn't have much in the way of punching power to be able to fire back and make Manny think. Manny was just able to walk forward and throw and throw and throw. And yes, a lot were missing, but there was nothing substantial coming back at him. So he just continued to do the same until he eventually got through. Algieri, too limited, not enough power to be able to really test Manny Pacquiao. We'll see where Pacquiao goes from here. I'm sure Algieri can come back. He's young enough. He took a bit of a beating in the fight, but nothing career-ending as far as I'm concerned. And Pacquiao, will he fight Marquez again? I doubt it. Marquez don't really seem to want the 5th fight, so it's up in the air who Pacquiao will fight. Will he fight Mayweather? Who knows? Drop your comments below. Let me know how you felt about Pacquiao's performance. Maybe you have a much harsher assessment of his performance than me. But I expected Pacquiao to have issues with Algieri's height, reach and movement. I expected him to find it difficult to get the right range to land his power shots. So that's why I wasn't really disappointed by Pacquiao's performance, because I was expecting it to be a bit awkward for him. Fighting a guy that tall and rangy who moves so much, who fights long, it's not easy, especially if you're not used to it, because Pacquiao's not a pressure fighter. Pacquiao's not used to having to cut off the ring and close down the distance. He's not a guy who is used to bobbing and weaving like Mike Tyson and coming underneath with shots. He's not used to fighting like that. He's not used to having to cut off the ring. If that was Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. in there, he would have cut off the ring a lot more effectively than Pacquiao. Pacquiao was following Algieri round because Pacquiao's not a pressure fighter. He's not used to having to fight that way against a guy so tall who moves so much. So I was expecting Pacquiao to have an awkward time in there, finding his range. And for that reason, I'm not really disappointed by his performance. I thought it was, decent given the circumstances. But drop your comments below. Maybe you've got a much more harsh assessment of his performance. And who would you like to see Manny Pacquiao fight next? And where do you see Chris Algieri going from here? Maybe a Provodnikov rematch if Provodnikov gets past Castillo like we all expect him to. Drop your comments below. This is Hatman. I'm out.